celebrations.
Love that. Love it.
Add that.
Please rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do a roll call, please.
Wonderful.
Here.
Hybord.
Here.
Gardine.
Here.
Palmer. Here. Pecan. And Platt.
Here. As a courtesy of the members of the audience and the Board of Education, please silence your cell phones. The public will be able to speak during public comment if signed up. If you have a paper to hand to Dr. Merkel, he'll get it up here to me as well. Just make sure it's all completed out. If you could get that to him the next minute, that would be appreciated. Robin? Okay, excellent. All right, first item of business, approval of agenda.
Or.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? All right, next item on the agenda, reports. Board member reports.
Nothing.
Nothing.
I had the opportunity to go to the basketball game on Friday night. We ran into each other and very just so well attended and great crowd from both sides. And so the unified team, and I just want to make sure that we give a great job to Matt Workman and his whole crew. There were a lot of people on the bench helping out and on the court. But it was just so empowering and just also empowering for all the students. In addition, right after the game, I got to attend the hockey game, and this was the Ryan Fisher hockey game. And I just want to mention that, it doesn't happen at the hockey games. There's just great coaching everywhere. And I think that, keeping Ryan's legacy amongst those group of boys and building resiliency and also empowering them is just absolutely huge. So hats off to Joel and his coaching staff, and also to the Fisher family and the whole hockey program. But again, it extends to a lot of athletics at our school. I just happened to go to the hockey game that night. So great day, great evening for Grandville. And I know tomorrow they play again at 4:15. And then again, they play for the student body, I believe, but that's during the day. So if you can get over to the high school tomorrow, I encourage you to go over. My husband bought me a t-shirt.
Okay.
Yeah, really good stuff.
So, thank you. Amy.
Mostly, we have some concerts coming up for high school and middle school orchestra and band, all that good stuff's going on. Junior high, I got to go watch 2 weeks in a row. I got to watch the basketball girls team, and they played. It's amazing because we had 17 girls total, which is a very small number. So they broke those up into the A and the B team. And so this last week they had their girls, which was like 8 or 9 girls. And they had another team that was a full 17 on the bench. And it was really great. I encourage anybody who can to go to if you're going to go to these games, go 1 week and then the next week, and you will see amazing growth. A lot of these girls are girls that have never played basketball before. And it's so much fun to watch them improve that way. It's really cool that we have more sports coming up. We've got preseason track has already started and lacrosse is starting up pretty soon. And the only thing I have to report from Parks and Recs is that they actually are, I saw that we had some things through the city with the cadets. So that's in the works. So it's cool. Yeah.
Just want to mention the survivor thing at the high school, and they raised $27,000 to be able to give to other families. And my niece Liz Palmer was on the team and raised some money. She didn't win it, but she was up there. The top 5 of them were tennis players. So something about our tennis program that they got some great survivors. Let's see. Oh, lastly, I did have a chance to see some of our students out in the community. They were at the Be Nice Symposium, helping other students learn about Be Nice and what they do within the high school to, again, bring that action plan to life. And they were sharing, ideas and just kudos to our team from Grandville who went and shared, because they've been doing it a long time. Christy, I think the high school's had the club for many years, and it's being sharing these to new schools and learning. So I just was really proud of our students there.
Cool.
Happy President's Day.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to attend some band concerts, right? The free festival concerts have been going on, so that's been cool to see. Excited for that. I think it's March 3rd. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it March 3rd? March 3rd, I think it's festival. Yeah. So that's coming up. And also, I'm going to plug something near and dear to my heart: the Athletic Hall of Fame. The Grandville Athletic Boosters is doing something new this year. We've always had an Athletic Hall of Fame, but it's been kind of spotty, hit or miss how we've inducted people, and we're trying to turn it into a yearly event now. And it's going to be, it's going to have a dinner and a presentation that's going to go along with it. So that's coming up on March 12th. We're pretty excited. We've got 5 inductees this year. 2 coaches, 2 longtime coaches who've been very successful in building a lot of our student athletes with great character. So we got that coming up. 3 athletes, and I guess gotta say I'm just kind of overwhelmed and blown away by the level of athletes and coaches that we have at Grandville. When you look historically, I mean, we have Olympians, we've got college national championships, we got professional athletes. So it kind of surprised me, right? I mean, I've been here all my whole life, and you don't hear about all these folks and how well they do and how they compete. But I was really kind of surprised by the level of athletes we have. So March 12th, if you're interested, there's going to be an online auction you can get involved in as well. If you don't want to attend the event, you can still bid on some great items. And really kind of the cool thing was all of our sports teams put together packages for people to bid on. And that's how we're really trying to raise money to support the Grandville Athletics. So that's my pitch for the Hall of Fame there.
So you selling tickets?
I'm selling tickets online. Absolutely. We've got them online. Go on the Facebook page. You'll be able to, there's a link. Yep.
Well, it's also impressive about that is how many of those athletes are not just physically talented, but academically talented.
Yeah.
We
Yep.
consistently send so many students. We consistently send so many students to all state.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
all right. I have a few things. In terms of athletics, I enjoyed watching the senior night of swim recently. That was fun. Thank you to Brenda for taking pictures of our young men as they were finishing out their season and really celebrating what they've achieved as a team. Also, I've been noticing kids bringing home lots of stuff about scheduling at the high school, and I love seeing that because it also reminds me not only are we focused on academics in the moment, and we're thinking about classes and chem homework and stuff like that, but careers. And there's so many opportunities on those forms, and that we support so many programs in the community too. We don't just keep kids here, but we send them out for so many things. So kudos to those. Some I've seen recently with the band. Also our AV program that had a few students win national awards, including I was really excited to see Cade Popkin got an award for his scoring of the music. He's a very talented musician. And that was really cool to see different ways to apply music than what we traditionally talk about just in the classroom. So kudos to those programs for lifting those students up and encouraging them into unique career paths. I was at the Unified game. What a night. That was so much fun. The energy in the room was great. And I love that we were supporting both sides. As you all know, special needs students are near and dear to my heart. And we actually brought our emotional support dog from our house to enjoy the game as well. So that was fun. And I look forward to hopefully going to the next couple of games too. So I encourage you, if you haven't been there, please join the community in celebrating these teams. Congratulations to the wrestling team. Sounds like they had some big wins. State, yeah. Going to state. Bubba does such a great job. He's getting inducted. Isn't he?
Yeah, he's one of their inductees.
And Dutch. Yep, it's proof in the pudding there. He's just been not just a coach, a mentor to our students, and what he does over at the Grandville Education Program with our pathways is just phenomenal. We all know that we can teach students, but what really changes them is the relationship. And Bubba that's the foundation of everything he does in the classroom and on the wrestling mat. So kudos to him. Also looking
Pathways program, correct?
Yes,
Right,
yes, the pathways, yeah. And also looking forward to seeing the power lifters. I think we're sending 16 of our power lifters to state this week on the varsity squad, so that's pretty impressive. We're traveling out to Lake Orion for that this weekend. Some good things. keeping with the tradition of talking to some of our administrators around the district and hearing some good things, at South, the Student Council is working together to find unique new ways to recognize students and lift them up among their peers. So they've been talking about that. At Grandview, they just finished a celebration of the Winter Olympics where they did all sorts of different activities. They did look at the athletics behind it, but also about the spirit, the sportsmanship, the patriotism, and the symbols that go along with that within our country to support our teams. And they did a lot of artwork to support that as well. At the middle school, they're really excited to start selecting furniture for the new building. It's getting to be so real every time I drive back into that area each morning, like it's there. So this is getting exciting to see all the campus start to come together and see this come to fruition for our community. At the high school, of course, we had the Unified Game and Senior Survivor, and I just wanted to highlight that they raised $28,000 in 1 week. And all that money goes to the Student Assistant Fund, which is a way that we can help students that might be struggling with any particular needs that they have, paying for activities at school or maybe household things that they need, clothing, things like that. So just goes to show the kind of community that we live in, that we do these kind of things and have such a great turnout. So kudos to the high school students for doing that. And they really had to put themselves out there and raise money. And at Cummings, parents got to go to the spelling bee. They were really excited to invite parents in and have that opportunity. They recently had a spelling bee, and they also had a mobile dentist in who served 30 students, and they have multiple opportunities already scheduled for the mobile dentist to come back as well. I love programs like that because
Who's that from? Who does that?
I don't know, I have to ask Mr. Martini who does it. I know when I worked with schools out in rural Michigan, we did that. We brought in fluoride treatments, especially in areas where we had students who didn't have fluoridated water. It was
Ottawa
great.
County has a van. I'm wondering if it's from Ottawa County.
Do you know the name?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah,
That's
but
good.
it'd be good to know.
Nice
All right.
update.
So that's all I have. I'm gonna pass it on to you.
Okay, thanks. Well, you guys covered obviously a lot going on in our district, a lot we can be very, very proud of. So I won't reiterate many of those things. I would want to mention competitive cheer. As usual, they're having a highly successful year, and I was at wrestling last week, and so looking forward to them on Wednesday at Howell. So a lot of great things happening there. One thing that I did want to mention at our last board meeting, you know, and I guess in some board meetings prior to that, there are times where, you know, I'll hear a comment about not having questions, you know, you haven't answered our questions. And I would just want to bring that up and mention, we are always here to answer questions. The day-to-day things that happen in our district that we are in charge of, we being our district administration here within this building on a daily basis. So please, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to me or to reach out to one of our other people that are here. We want to make sure your questions are answered. We want to make, you know, the last thing we want is for you to feel like they're not. And we've had this discussion before, and I know many of you know that this is not really that forum to do that. We do have parent forums that we have and try to have a topic and have, you know, we'll present information and give an opportunity for question and answer. But please, if there's anything that you feel you don't get answered, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you. Appreciate that. And without further ado, we have West Elementary with us here today. So Mr. Mulder, if you would go ahead and take it over.
Where do you want to start here?
You bet.
Well, we're here for a couple different reasons tonight. One, to highlight some of the good things going on West, and I have a few students from our leadership group and junior librarians here, also to celebrate our Board of Education as a big thank you in West fashion. We're slightly delayed in that. So
My people.
We like to carry it on.
we do. Yes, we're big on that. So over the last 3 years, we've been part of the Hill Grant, which has been on the west side of Michigan. And one of the big focuses has been reading and looking at our reading score specific. We're in year 3 wrapping that up. And so we are now setting up our sustainability plan to go on without the grant. As a part of that, vocab has been a huge part of what we've been doing and why we've been doing it. So that's been a theme throughout the year, but you also hear that theme kind of popping up with our students here today. So the first part of our thank you to our Board of Education, there are a number of thank you cards. They're meant to be passed around and shared. They're not specific to anyone. But some of our students, students have good times celebrating some quality moments there. And I will say, Mr. Wonder Jim did get some self-portraits from.
Yeah, there's one with your name on it. Pass that over to you. That's great. I love it.
But I'm trying to think, Barb has the most memorable one, and Barb, they don't come close to
So that's part of it. The second is the library and our vocabulary and our books have been such a big part of the year. We've given a bunch of little award-winning books here recently, some local artists, and I set those books over there on the table. What we would love to do is create a remembrance or a dedication to our Board of Education in our library. So if over the course of the next week or 2 weeks or that you have here, if you could pick one out and possibly write a little message in there, we would like to memorialize it with your name on front and put it out in our library. And that's kind of what our junior librarians do. They're going to talk about that in a second. So we're very excited about that. If you don't see a book that speaks to you, the best part is let me know the title and we'll go get it and make sure that you have it. And we can put that up in our library. Because that's our big thing is we want to honor you by giving the books back to our kids. And so, like I said, just sign the inside, maybe a little message, and we'll put a dedication to you on the front. And then that's kind of where our junior librarians jump in here a little bit. Mrs. Dykes, our librarian, has created some 6th grade junior librarians, part of her leadership group there. And they play a big role in how our library functions now. So I want to share a little bit about what they do to kind of put that together. Casey and Addie, do you want to share a little bit, General?
So basically in junior library, we do things like we check in books, basically check in books that have already been read and used. And we put them in the right, where they're supposed to go, in the right genre, like sports, fantasy, and all those. We also do little kid books, because it is, Black History Month, we like to put on like those kind of books that represent those, on display for little kids to read about it.
Nice.
And a lot of what we models after the KDL, kids love books that they can see the front cover of.
Right.
So part of their job is to go through and create the displays out on top of all our bookshelves throughout from little kids all the way up to the chapter books there and help highlight some of those books. They also play a big leadership part and figure out the themes that we have going on throughout the year. Rocco, do you want to share one of ours coming up?
So for March this month, this next coming month, it's going to be space theme. And usually we have the door come into the library, we usually decorate it. And I think this month is going to live in a solar system.
Pretty cool. So they're
You're
gonna
laughing.
decorate the library,
Yeah.
but they also had to decide on a theme. So they have a list of themes. They had to go through the discussions and decide how space would become the theme for March's reading month. And then we carry that on throughout the school. So they're the leadership group that makes that decisions and helps out with that. Pretty cool. And then the last part of it was we have a special guest here at school today, virtually. Bryce is going to share a little bit about our special guest.
We
here.
have the author, was Lisa McMahon. She wrote the Unwind series.
Wow.
She's coming out with a new book. It's called The Forgotten Five, and it's about kids who have supernatural powers. And she also shared some encouraging words about being an author and how to write a book and how much time it takes.
So she spent about 45 minutes with us today.
Fantastic.
With our 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, both in person and virtual at West, and a number of classes from Cummins Elementary. I have some connections over there that had to get dragged in. And with that, Lisa spent a lot of time talking about the writing process, how to develop an idea, how to write a book. And what does she say takes the most time? The writing?
And the revision.
The revision. So she said she spends 6 months in revision just to get that book put together. And do you remember how many books she's written? 28 books. And the coolest part is she's actually from West Michigan, the Holland area. So it was very exciting to have her come back, and she put that on for free for us as a gesture and a connection to one of our staff members that really helped out. So our junior librarians play a huge role in what goes on and supporting our school and where we're at, and we want to celebrate that a little tonight. Any questions that you might have?
So how long has the junior librarians been part of
It's evolved over the last 3 years.
It's so cool. I think that's so neat.
They learn the ins and outs. Now, I still think they kind of like it because they get out of the cold weather in the winter. They do have to commit to spending time in it. They do it during their recess. It's not like they're missing class time. They go there during the recess and help out. And one of the parts that they share with me is it allows Mrs. Dykes to spend more time with kids.
Yeah, that's very
And they learn
cool.
the ins and outs of the library and how it all works. And so often you'll see them helping out.
I'd love to have you share about this grant that you guys just won.
Well, yep, so I wouldn't say it was a winning as much as we were selected about 6 years ago. And it's the Hill Leadership Grant. It's run through Western Michigan.
There's a new one too, though.
Right, for the work with it, you're doing like with knitting and crocheting
So that's
also?
part of our GEF grant. So
Yes,
that kind
yeah.
of came out of our junior librarians, is sometimes they have a little bit of downtime and create another project or two. And one of the ones is they kind of got involved in and talked me into writing a grant for it is crocheting. And so I have about 10 to 12 sixth graders who are now learning the general art of crocheting, basic weaving, and we've written a grant to be able to bring that out to other classes and create to-go kits. And from a dexterity point, we love the dexterity that it brings, but it's also a calming mechanism too. Like, and
They do that in high school, right?
Yeah.
different versions of it, yes.
Just that's a great thing, and then just
Yeah.
zone out and just kind of get into it.
So that's kind of part of what they do too, is they generate ideas.
Yeah.
And then we act on it.
So I kind of wondered about it. Do you talk to your students or, that come to the library, like what they like, or how do you come up with your ideas?
So some kids wanted to like the they were coloring with like their own drawing and stuff, like coloring it. That's kind of how just and she was like she has crafts, kind of some crafts stuff.
It really did. She's absolutely right. Started with kids just drawing a little bit, artist work, and they turned into a display where now we have a constant organizer with artwork where kids can grab it randomly, and then Mrs. Dykes will post on the wall and turn it into her as a little memorial to just general artistic and crafts. And it's really, we don't know where it's gonna go, but we're excited about it.
I can tell you, I got a whole bunch of yarn and
So
crochet
if you
books to
have
donate to you.
donations, we
I do. My sons got into the knitting club at the high school and I ran out and bought a whole bunch of stuff hoping they would knit with me and they're like, no, just with our friends.
Yeah, well,
So,
our finding that is
I
school
will-
too.
I will
I've had no
donate.
parents go, well, they haven't brought anything home. I'm like, I can't control that.
Do you find that boys are doing it too? I mean, I think it has sometimes, that's
I
a
would
girl thing, but I just,
say
yeah.
half and half.
Yeah.
Those are just, they're having
Nice.
good conversations too.
Love it.
The relaxing part is, like, the calming part is the part that we've noticed here. We're looking at buying cutting up some cardboard so you can create little ones for them to be able to bring back to class, one appropriate, of course. But to create the weaving part in class, so it's a continuous thing going on. So, pretty exciting, pretty cool.
So I have a question for you all about this. I want to know, what is your favorite genre? What's the one that when someone comes in, they're like, I need to find a book, they're like, I gotcha.
I always go for this.
Yeah, I always go for fiction.
Our history teacher, love that.
I usually love like a graphic novel or something, there's a reason.
Love that.
So it's not realistic fiction. I feel that also understands it.
Fantastic. Well, what a nice diverse group of interests.
Yeah.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, and once again, thank you for all you do, and we'd like to be able to make you a part of West Elementary.
Thank you.
Nice. Great
Thank
job.
you so much. Thank you. That's the second transition. If anyone else can step out. You're welcome to stay, but we understand. Dinner may be calling. All right. Before we move to consent action item agendas, I do want to recognize a loss in our group, and that's Roger lost his father this week. And from the community and from the board, from the deepest of our hearts, we offer you our sympathy and condolences. We appreciate you being here tonight, and I imagine you have a heavy burden in your heart right now that he was someone that you really looked up to, as we understand from the stories that you've told and from the words you expressed this week. We are very sorry for your loss. Moving on to consent action items. I'm going to flip my pages here. Yep. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the minutes of February 7th, 2022 workshop board meeting. Can I get a motion on consent? Pardon? Oh, sorry, it isn't consent. Sorry, I'm still thinking about family. It's hard to separate yourself and get into business for a moment. So, sorry, consent action item. Thank you. All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? All right, moving on to regular action items. First one, the high school ionization project. A moment to flip to your pages here. I'm looking forward to talking about this one because I feel like it's something new. It is recommended that the Board of Education authorize Owen Ames Kimball Company, OAK, to issue a letter of intent in the amount indicated to the contractor listed pending confirmation that all requirements of the contract documents have been met. Upon receipt by OAK of all appropriate documentations, it is further recommended that the Board of Education award a contract to the contractor as specified below. Is mechanical work from Northwest Kent in the amount of $169,300. The qualified bid package from the contractor specified above, including alternate totals of $169,300. In addition, it is recommended the Board of Education approve an allowance of contingency costs of $16,930. The combined total of the bid plus the contingency is $186,230. Can I get a motion?
Support.
Discussion.
We are very excited in our buildings to be looking at this type of a project and, always trying to improve the air quality for our people within our buildings. And I'll turn things over to Heather and go from there.
So for this item and the next item, I do have a group that I'd like to introduce to you. We have Rob Gulliver from OAK as a project manager. I think you're all familiar with Arlene Cribley, our facilities director. Chris Arnson from GMB is an architect and also on all of our projects. And Jeff Tweest from GMB as well. He specializes in the HVAC side of things. So just to give you a little bit of an idea, ever since COVID and even a little bit before that, we were looking into air quality in our buildings and taking steps to improve that. We do a lot of bringing in cooler air in the mornings and that helps to cycle it through as well. All of our buildings, including the admin building, except for the current middle school and the high school, have had this done. It's been probably over the last 18 months. We've been able to knock out the projects at the buildings. Those projects were smaller, so they were under the bid threshold, so we didn't need to bring them for approval. So we also use filtration, and there are HEPA filters in some of the buildings, I believe, right? Because there's two different systems. So yeah, so the reason the middle school, we're gonna wait, and again, there's a lot going on with the HVAC when we do that renovation to add the AC and the chiller. So we'll be waiting until we do those renovations to tackle that building. So we'll bring that back because that'll be another large bid as well. So I did include in here a presentation that Jeff put together, just talking about, what is it and how it kind of works. So go down here, I think, to the second page, because that kind of really talks about how it works. But basically, the system generates positive and negatively charged ions, which are released into the ductwork. And basically, because these particles are so small, what that does is it allows them to meld together, if you will, so that the system can get rid of those particles and contaminants. Is that right? Okay. This is a little bit out of my my range. So
That's very helpful, actually.
but yeah, so I guess, I'd just kind of like to open it up for questions. We talk about, is it safe? And there is a standard for these cleaners, an EPA standard. And the specs that were written and that were bid meet the standard. So you can kind of see there's other school districts that are using the same technology from Cedar, Wyoming, Byron, lots of Kent, West Ottawa, Hamilton, etc. So we just take any questions that you have.
No, I already had one. So I'm stuck on the 5-6 building. So when we put air handlers in the 5-6 building and we redo it, are we going to keep those air handlers in every room? So are these being installed in those air handlers or the main system?
It's in the ductwork throughout, right?
It is, but
It'll be on an individual, yes, correct.
say that again.
It will be on the individual, yes, units,
Yeah, that's my assumption. That
yes.
That's why we have them. That's why they're there. That's why they're still there, right?
That's correct.
What kind of maintenance do you have to do with this? Because this is ion, it's not UV.
Correct.
So is there any periodic annual maintenance that has to be done with these items? Do they have to be cleansed in any way?
Yep, so when maintenance would go in to do regular filter changing, basically just go in there with a small brush and clean them off at the same time, get the dust off them.
Okay, all right. And I assume there's electronic monitoring that tells them when they're in need of cleaning, or you just do it on a regular cycle?
Just a regular cycle.
Okay, great. How common is this becoming? I mean, obviously there's school districts that are doing it. Are there a lot of businesses that have already had this installed, or they're all moving to it based on, COVID?
Yep, it's definitely a modern trend that's been pushed forward in the light of things that are going on. It is, the technology was present prior to that, just wasn't as popular. We were installing it in some facilities prior to that, but it's definitely been more common the last 2 years.
And has the cost gone down over the past, 24 months, 36?
I'm not sure of that.
I would say no. Just like anything else right now.
Okay, and then comparing this to UV, is there a comparison, or are they apples and oranges?
They achieve similar results. They do it differently. With UV, typically you mount that inside the piece of equipment and it's filtering the air that's going by it at that point.
Correct.
With ionization, it releases the ions out into the room. So it's treating the room air, not just the air that's in the equipment.
No, I'm excited you guys are moving to this. I think it's bring comfort to families in the regard to this. Just in the current situation, you can't lower that lever. No, very nice. Thanks.
What's the longevity of these devices?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, it is a relatively new technology, so they've been widely used the last probably 5 years. And all the ones I know of that were installed 5 years ago are still running fine. But beyond that, it's still a relatively new product. So
Are they warranty?
I believe the standard warranty is 1 year.
And if I report from other schools on any,
Pardon me?
are there any reports from other schools where they've been involved with the installation, where there's any challenges or issues we should be aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
I've checked around, it's been very positive from people.
So funding for this, is this something we can use our experts for, or is this coming out of?
We're gonna take this out of the sinking fund.
Any more questions? All right, I'll see roll call.
Michael.
Yes.
Buck. Yes. Gardine.
Yes.
Hahn, absent. Plummer.
Yes.
Wonder Jim.
Yes.
Horn.
Yes. Thank you. All right, next item for discussion It is recommended that the Board of Education authorize Owens, Ames, Kimball, OAK to issue a letter of intent in the amount indicated to the contractor listed pending confirmation that all requirements of the contract documents have been met upon receipt by OAK of all appropriate documentation. It is further recommended that the Board of Education award a contract to the contractor as specified below. Type of work: roofing, contractor hopes for roofing in the amount of $764,000. The qualified bid package from the contractor specified above, including alternate totals, $764,000. In addition, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve an allowance for contingency costs of $76,400. The combined total of the bid plus the contingency is $840,000, $840,400. All in favor? Oh, sorry, gosh, I'm out of it tonight. Thank you.
So this project has to do with West Elementary and the robotics building and the roofing for those.
So West Elementary, similar to the East Elementary project we brought you a year ago. It's at West, we're able to use the fluid coating on the entire roof. So the entire roof will be redone, and then that will carry a 20-year warranty. I don't believe there's any roof drains that we need to take into account for that. So that's another reason why we're able to do the fluid throughout. The robotics center, formerly Orion, will be a complete tear off. That's a shingle roof, and that will carry a 30-year warranty. The breakout between the two, that the robotics center will be a little over $100,000, and the rest will be rest of the cost is attributed to West Elementary.
Heather, can you give more detail with regard to the bidder list and the difference, please?
Yep, so there was a bid that did not meet the specs that were put out. And that is the reason for the large difference between low and what we were bringing for approval. It was essentially incomplete.
So in the past, you typically told us that in our.
I think, I apologize. I think it was up here, right there on the comment. There's, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But you usually tell us when, like, for the lowest bidder, that you put that in the notes that.
I apologize for that.
No, that's okay. You know me. I like to ask questions. No, that's fine. Have we done,
No, they did not.
This doesn't sound familiar.
No, we've not used them personally here at Grandville. But OAK is very familiar with them. They're on a lot of their sites.
Any more questions? All right, so roll call.
Palmer.
Yes.
Jardine.
Yes.
DeHaan. Absent. Buck. Yes. Underhill.
Yes.
Claiborne.
Yes.
Fine.
Yes. All right. On to item 5C, the 2022 budget amendment. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the resolution within the 2021-2022 amendment budget booklet as presented for the general fund. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Now turn things over to Heather. Go ahead.
So I have a presentation for you tonight for the general fund amendment. Right. So this presentation is mainly going to be focused, well, not mainly, it's focused strictly on amending the general fund budget. And I want to first revisit the why behind amending a budget. We are required to obtain your approval for a budget prior to the beginning of the fiscal year. And as you know, there are so many unknowns. So I start working on next year's budget, 22-23 in March. And as we get to May, some of those items are become known, but typically the State Aid Act has not been approved yet. And so there's a lot of unknowns. So I just wanted to outline them here to kind of show you what we really didn't know at the time that I brought the proposed budget versus what we know now. So the State Aid Act was still in process. We had an estimated foundation allowance of $83.11 per pupil, which at that time was a $200 increase per pupil from the prior year. We were estimating a blended pupil count of 5,604. Basically, we did not have our federal grant allocations, so we just rolled what we had from the prior year. And staffing levels were rolled from 2021 with a required step plus 1.5%, which is in the contract. Fast forward to what we know now. State Aid Act was finalized with a foundation allowance set at $8,700 per pupil. So it's quite the increase there. The October pupil count, I'm sometimes so amazed at how close.
How do you do that?
I don't know, honestly, like that, especially coming out of the COVID year, it was very lucky. And then our federal grant applications have now all been approved except for ESSER 3. They needed some modifications, so we're working on getting them that information, but it should be approved soon for us to be able to close that out this year. So, and our staffing levels, the FTE was finalized, and again, like I said, with the step and the 1.5%. So just a refresher again, 5 sources of revenue: local, state, federal, incoming transfers, and other. Kind of outline where each source comes from. The majority of our local dollars comes from property taxes. State money is all the foundation, primarily the foundation money, and then there are some categoricals in there as well. Federal dollars are primarily title and IDEA, and then as of the past couple of years, CARES Act, and now the American Rescue Plan as well. Incoming transfers, probably one of the largest ones in there is the countywide enhancement millage. We also have, we run 2 regional programs. We run a ASD regional program and a transitions regional program for students who have graduated high school or are in that 2-year window of transitioning into the world of work. So we do house students from other districts, and they pay tuition through their state foundation for that as well. And then other really consists of our transfer from food service. So what we have here is kind of showing you where we ended 2020, 2021. They're proposed and then the amended. So local sources were adjusted to reflect the increase in the property tax values. That was probably the biggest line item. If you look historically, the last 5 years, I think on average, they've increased at a minimum of 5%. Coming out of a COVID year, I was probably a little conservative. So they did come in at about 4.8%. We also have been able to add back, daycare for the full year, as opposed to it was kind of on and off a little bit during the COVID year. And then also athletic admissions, sports are back, which is great. So state sources are adjusted to reflect that 90-10 pupil blend from the prior year super blend. And I really don't want to get into that super blend calculation. Let's just say one thing is back to normal, right? So kind of excited about that. There was a decrease in Prop A funding, and that just as a result of those increased property tax values. So if your property tax values go up, your Prop A on your state aid goes down, and vice versa. So also there's an increase in the Mtss reform. We call it the UAAL, the unfunded accrued actuarial liability on the retirement system. Just to remember, that's a net zero impact to our fund balance. It is essentially $5.6 million in and $5.6 million right back to the state. You don't want my opinion on that. We also saw an increase in special ed categorical funding, which as you know, when I bring you the 22-23 budget, hopefully that is going to stick, and we are going to be really close to the school finance collaborative where special ed will finally be fully funded, which is great. Federal sources were adjusted down just to reflect the actual approved applications, and I have a sources and uses page coming up so I can show you that. And then incoming transfers and adjustments were adjusted. They were increased up to for a one-time refund of prior year work comp expenditures. Years ago, before my time, we joined it was called the Trust in the Fund, the fund being workers' comp. The state had different rules in place because it was a self-funded pool, essentially. So districts that were part of this fund had to put money on deposit, if you will. The fund has proved it is sustainable, and just this past year, the fund is in the process of being closed, and the district isn't going to be receiving their deposits back. So districts they all will receive them back. So for this year, it was about $400,000. We'll probably get one more payment next school year. Here's a breakdown of the sources and uses for our federal funds. Probably the top half you're used to seeing, and the bottom half are all the new ESSER money. So
How long will the ESSER?
ESSER 2.
ESSER, when will they start depleting?
So ESSER 2 is scheduled to be used by the end of the school year. ESSER 3, you have until 2024. I have to put a plan together for all of it. You're not going to spend all of it this year. So it goes back to that funding cliff and what we're trying to avoid. And when I get to the FTE slide, you're going to see why we're doing that in that way.
Okay.
Because we want it to be sustainable as best, So we also, kudos to our treehouse program, Julie Scott, Jennifer Harper. They had took the time to fill out the grant paperwork. And so for the American Rescue Plan childcare side of things, they're going to bring in about $750,000 this year to support treehouse preschool programming. Moving on to expenditures, again, 5 categories. Salaries and benefits typically make up 85% of the district's budget. We have a line item for purchase services, which includes all our sub costs, custodial, daycare, and software costs. Supplies, this line item does include utilities, so gas, electric, and yes, we have seen an increase in those line items. Primarily though, I went because I was shocked and I went back and I'm like, why is it so high? Remember, we were shut down for a while. We were remote, and so we didn't have the usage last year that we did this year. So it looks more like a 18-19 school year. Really wasn't that much of an increase, I guess.
We all got hit with it.
Capital outlays, so our vehicles and equipment, and then other, again, it's kind of that intra-district, if you will. So where our itinerant staff, which is our speech, psych, social work, OT, they fall under Grandville's contract, but they are paid by Kent ISD. And there are funding reasons for doing that. So essentially they invoice us and we repay the payroll to the ISD. Special ed transportation for deans. And then again, we also have kids in regional programs at other districts, Wyoming, Byron.
Answer your question.
Yeah.
Looking back at utilities, how do we plan for bringing a new building online?
That's a great question. Very carefully. No, honestly, I take the square footage, and the new 7-8 building is going to be approximately this. It's going to be between the middle school and the high school. So basically, I'll probably, again, be conservative and just budget what I budget for the high school. When you look year to year, you can kind of you kind of see a trend of if it's going up or down. We actually meet, Arlen and I meet with a consumers rep each year, and we look at our time of use and what program we're on to determine if that makes sense to stay on that program or not. So, but that's the plan. You know, the nice thing, I mean, grateful that, and it's just a timing thing, right? That extra money from the fund that's coming in as a one-time payment, some of that goes into the fund balance reserve, and then it's there for your operations as you open these new buildings. Because you're right, we already opened the GEC too, so there's, you know, just kind of go based on square footage of what you see at other buildings.
With the new building being the newest building and having the newest roof, have you done any solar studies on ways to offset some of the new utility costs? I know we looked at that like.
Yeah, we
years ago.
had a portion of the roof I thought that we were looking at over the science area to do, so. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So then again, too, just wanted to show you overall, you see the total of 66 million was actual expenditures in 2021, and then proposed was 69, and amended, it looks to be around 70,300,000. I did break it out by the 5 categories that we just talked about, so you could kind of see the dollar amounts there. I'll talk a little bit more in detail over here. So salaries, again, adjusted to actual staffing levels. Benefit levels adjusted for open enrollment selections and the increase in that Mtss UAL again. Purchase services, we adjusted to increase in sub-costs from prior year. And supplies and materials, you saw an increase in utilities. And then buildings and departments had carryover budgets. They have carryover budgets every year, but last year we worked really hard, and they worked really hard to just, because we didn't know about the funding and how that was going to look, to just get the necessities. So we don't, we hold them harmless from that. They're allowed to carry that over, and then they'll look to implement those funds back into their building as they see fit. The capital outlay did decrease due to the timing related to the middle school and high school ionization projects. Kind of goes back to your question earlier, Jason. Initially, we were thinking of plugging that in, decided not to. And then there were some other adjusted costs for staffing in the regional 3 special ed costs that have come through. So here's that staffing levels as a 3-year comparison broken down for you to see. So 2020, which would have been the 1920 school year, we had a total of 655 employees. 2020, 2021, it jumped to 669, and I'm, you know, excited that we're growing, being able to provide supports for our kids. So we're now at 682 employees, and it's just kind of the breakdown of by group. Kind of goes a little bit to the sustainability question. And I will say, I was probably the most nervous of our entire team about the 2020-21 remote learning, and how we hired 18 staff that, I mean, we had staff that wanted to slide in, but then we hired an additional 18. And I was just, how is this going to work? What's the next year going to look like? Like, I couldn't see it working, but it did. And I'll tell you, all of the staff that were hired in 2020-21 last school year, we didn't have to eliminate positions. We were very fortunate. Like, it was just through attrition, whether it was retirements or resignations. We were able to absorb all that. So that helps me sleep easy at night now. And then, so fund balance, just wanted to show you what, you know, we were projecting about 11.59%. Just a reminder, we do have a fund balance policy where we try to maintain a fund balance of approximately 15%. We haven't hit it in my time here, but we have improved from where we were. So
We're making
and
progress.
we're making progress.
Right.
Yep. And two, I guess I just want to, 85% is our people, right? So we need to make sure that we are taking care of our people so that we can provide quality service and programming. So if for some reason I was to bring you a budget of less than 7%, you would have to take some action on that. But and part of the reason too for hitting that 15% number is just a factor in our credit rating, which has an effect on when we're selling bonds. So, and I just wanted to provide you the history so you could see as a percentage. That is as a percentage of expenditures. So that's the other thing too, that's kind of funny, right? You saw that we went from 66 to 70. So our denominator is changing, right? So you don't get that big of an impact on your fund balance if your expenditures go up that much.
I don't think we've ever seen the fund balance since I've been here, 15%.
Yeah, I didn't
It may
go
have
back
been in
past
like
2010.
2001, but yeah,
Yeah.
as long as we're going, that's
Yeah.
fine. And we have a
Oh, I-
policy, that's fine.
It's also kudos to the district and the boards of previous and current and the administration because it continues to grow and we continue to grow. And we also are one of the lowest tax base percentages in the county too. So we are very fiscally responsible and continuing to put away money as what is important to our district and adding buildings at the same time. So
And how we handle our clients. I think
absolutely.
we're one of the few that handle them the way that we do. We are one of the least risky districts in West Michigan.
Oh, we've got, thank you.
Nice job.
And thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? All right, all in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Into the final item on the regular action agenda, item 5D, which is the school district calendar. This is always something we all look forward to seeing. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached 2022-2023 school year calendar, which is aligned with the Kent ISD Common Calendar. Like a motion?
So moved.
Support. Okay, talk to us about it, Roger.
So process with this, we take last year's calendar, we roll it forward into 2022, 2023. We sit down with our association, have some conversation. If you look at this calendar, you will see that most things on here are very similar to this past year. There are a few things that change. The holidays, the Christmas holiday, the New Year holiday are on Sundays, which means they're observed on the Monday. When you come back in January, what that did is instead of coming back on Monday, the 2nd, you would have been coming back on Tuesday, the 3rd. And what that did in essence is make us tack on a day at the end of the year where kids would be coming back for their last day, a half day on Monday, which would have been, looks like June 5th. So we had some discussion about that. And what we decided to do is look at getting a waiver from the state. You can get a waiver from the state to alter the common calendar portion as long as the ISD also agrees that they support you doing that. So what we did is we put in for a state waiver. We did get a letter of support from the ISD, and the holiday break was supposed to begin with the last day being December 16th. And that, then you had your 2 weeks, as I mentioned, and you came back on that 3rd because of the observed holiday on January 2nd. What we decided to do is go a couple days into the following week. So we are going to go on this calendar December 19th and a half day on December 20th. And then we would begin our holiday break. And then as you can see, instead of coming back on January 3rd. We'll come back on January 4th. And what that does within that time, by adjusting that, it allows that last day to be Friday, June 2nd, instead of coming back that following Monday. So that's the only thing that really has changed, is we adjusted that with the waiver. And I think it's a very positive thing all around as far as looking at a calendar for students. You know, it also adjusts, it gives you a couple more days to balance the first semester and the second semester, which can get out of whack at times. So.
Is there any concerns at the high school about exams? They typically go Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So now would they be Friday, Monday, Tuesday?
Yeah, I believe
Okay.
they would just switch that
Okay.
and move those to those days.
So do you lose any educational days in that second semester? Okay. I'm just trying to figure out.
What
Trying to
it does
visualize
is
it.
it balances, and also remember, typically snow days happen during the second semester, so it does balance out pretty well. But you know, if you have a really short first semester and then you have snow days in that second, it can get things out of whack. So this just helps by a couple of days. It helps balance with that. Also, you know, as we've had, you know, since the time we started school a few weeks before the holiday in August, we have tried to give parents and kids extended weekends for those first few weeks of school, because if people go on vacations at that time, because kids are usually back for band and athletics and so on, if they go anywhere, it typically tends to be on a weekend. So giving them those extended weekend times help with the opportunity to do that. So, yeah.
I like it from a perspective of, to me, it's a back to normal calendar.
And it is great though that high school ends that semester.
Yeah.
It's probably the best thing that ever
Yeah.
happened.
I think it allows kids to be kids over the holiday break with their families and not worry so much about, oh my gosh, I got exams coming up when we come back and so on, and get that fresh new start.
So this is a common calendar, so it's amongst everybody throughout the ISD, but some of them are different, right? So especially this president.
Actually, there are certain holiday or breaks, like spring break is common.
Yeah.
In Kent County, usually the winter break is common. And then you have Thanksgiving that is common. We adjusted that a little bit. One thing I didn't mention as well is this also aligns better with Calvin Christian's. Their calendar is very similar to what ours is going to be. I talk to Eric on a regular basis, and we try to keep very similar. So it helps with our Calvin Christian friends as well.
All right. All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Calendar. Next item is discussion and report of the MTSS winter benchmark data review.
Favorite topic. Right? If Heather can throw around acronyms that involve actuary talk and things like that, I figure we can get some MTSS in here. This is what works. Everybody knows Jason Blair, our MTSS coordinator. Jason does an amazing job of setting up our systems and working hands-on in all of the buildings with a large group of people. Following our last meeting where we talked about the benchmark reporting, on the heels of that, we had our winter data review for MTSS. We do data review 3 times a year at the district level. Buildings do data review at their building level, so it scales up, right? And everybody brings their building data into the district level data review. And so after that presentation on fall benchmark data, we thought it would be a great opportunity just to talk and highlight some successes that came out of our winter data review just last week. So a couple of things. The summary on the screen here is the last page of the handout that we gave you. And I'm going to turn this over to Jason to talk about winter data review in just a second. But we wanted to include much more information than that, because so much goes into a data review either at the building level and then scaled up to the district level. So we're just gonna briefly go over winter data review today. Any questions you have about any of this other information, either specifics or how they happen at a systems level, just reach out and let us know.
Yeah, there are a handful of pages, and it's similar to the format that I have used before for Mtss updates to the board. Looking at where we are with our district capacity assessment, which is the ability to support systems district-wide, support the buildings and their work. It goes into a little bit for each buildings, where the buildings are with their data and so on. But the data reviews are really the whole point of the process, right? That with the MTSS system, we have these practices that we do, but without reflecting on whether or not they are working and looking at the outcomes that we are getting and looking at the fidelity with which we are using our system, we're not able to improve it and to respond to the data. And if there was ever a time where we needed to look at data and respond to it, this past 2 years have really highlighted that need, right? To look at it and respond to changing. Because then when things are cooking along typically in kind of your normal year, you kind of hit the same issues that kind of come up and then you work on them. The last couple of years has presented a whole host of changes and challenges and has had an impact on what we do with our system and what outcomes we are getting from our system. So in general, the data review summary, there's a purpose statement there. Just to make sure that we are determining if our implementation plan is working, if we're maintaining our fidelity of our systems. We did that really well through COVID. We saw a little bit of a decline in some of the fidelity of support that we have in place, but we stayed well above the threshold for effectiveness based upon the research. And so felt great about that. We weathered that in many cases better than a lot of districts did. And part of it is that having somebody in my role in this position that the district has created has helped to sustain the system as well. Districts that didn't have that kind of like water tower, right? It's putting pressure on the system to keep the pipes running. And so, there has been difficulties with sub shortages and professional development, things like that. But for the most part, we've been able to sustain our system quite well. In many cases, we have expanded what we're doing with things. So some of the things that have come out of the data reviews in the past, our SEL support and needs in the district have been things that have come out of discussions at the district level with data review. We adopted Haggerty Phonemic Awareness program, K2, because we recognized our data was showing us that we needed a systematic and explicit phonemic awareness exposure for our kids more than we were currently getting. And so that's one of the accomplishments at the district level that we added that in, and we're seeing some results of that in the buildings. Each of the buildings from their data review processes reported accomplishments up to the district level, so we can review some of the successes they've had at their buildings, and then the challenges and barriers that they reported to us. They were all the same, sure. Subs. In absences, right? Staff absences, kids being out. I talked to one teacher who said that she had not had her entire class in session since like October, right? This was January. Like somebody had, at least one student had been out the entire time. So those have been the major challenges, and the district, the county, and the state are well aware of those things. They're just challenging things to do something about quickly. So what we do with our process is we walk through district-wide data. We look at reading data for outcomes district-wide and by each building across the different areas of fundamental reading skills. We look at our social emotional screening data to look at our risk levels there for buildings. The winter data review is fun because we look at our school climate data. We do a school climate survey, and we get great results back from that. Really interesting to see what kids and parents and teachers are saying about our schools and our climate and our buildings. We look at behavior data. We collect behavior data at the building level using SWIS, which is a school-wide information system, what that stands for. And so teachers document students' behavior, and we can problem solve around that data and say, well, we're having a big increase in difficulties in the cafeteria, right? Or in the hallway or on the playground. And then we can use our system problem solving to address those areas. I call it creating a heat map of the building where behaviors are. And then
And that's exactly, and we cut you off, but a couple of months ago, that's exactly what Mr. Gilmy and students from South, or from Central Elementary presented on, the difference they've made using that data at the building level.
Yes, excellent. Okay, so you guys have covered that then. Excellent. Mr. Gilman's a great one to be enthusiastic about this. So he was very cheerful.
They were great.
Yeah. So then we identify, okay, where are some major areas that we're seeing that are difficult, below the outcomes that we want to see. And so the problem statement there, the problem statements go through the 5 different problem statements that we identified looking at the data. And then they're linked to a hypothesis statement. So part of the problem solving process is, okay, why do we think this is going on? Why do we think that we're seeing the outcomes that we are? What do we think that we might change to address some of those outcomes? And then we create objectives for each of those and an action plan. It's summarized here. I put priority action steps on there because they're kind of the big ticket items for each of the objectives. The fully developed action plan is much longer. It contains much more detail. It lays out timelines for when this should be done, who is doing it, what the expected outcome is, and all those things. So that's the brief look at what the data review looks like at the district level. We do that 3 times a year, as Scott mentioned. And at the building level, one of the big things that we're doing is working to integrate that with our school improvement planning so that we're not duplicating all these efforts. That when the buildings are having their data reviews, talking about all this data anyway, it's the same stuff that needs to be talked about for school improvement. And so we are increasingly linking those things together so that when they've gone through this process for MTSS, they have their school improvement stuff ready at the end as well.
This is, the accomplishment section is always fun for buildings to share. A couple of things you see written in there. First grade at Central was the highest it's been at the winter time in a number of years. Pat on the back for them, just in terms of addressing that need. Jason mentioned that one thing that came out is our focus on phonemic awareness. Similarly, East Elementary Kindergarten had some of their highest scores in.
It was the highest score in 8 years.
Wow. So, again, those are pockets.
100% of their students were at benchmark or above for phonemic awareness there. So
that validates the phonemic awareness effort that the teachers in buildings have put in. And that's been fantastic. In that box too, CICO stands for check in, check out. It's our initial tier 2 social behavior intervention. A lot like it sounds. Somebody's checking in with a student in the morning, checking out with them in the afternoon, talking about their day, and a little more complex in terms of the training and setup, but our buildings have that up and running. And I don't know if it's noted at the high school there, but the high school has already started and exited almost 10 kids in and out of check-in, check-out, just because they've given them support, improvements, and then on their way. So a lot of great things happening. And at this, I want to give Jason some props because at this winter data review, we actually had 3 visitors from Oak Hills Public Schools, which is a suburb of Cincinnati, Ohio. And they were investigating starting an MTSS system, somehow contacted the author of the main book that Michigan is based on, and he said, you know who's doing it well is Grandville.
He's the president of Mtss, right?
So they contacted Jason and had some Zoom calls and said, you know, we'd really love to see that. Can we come visit?
And they want to bring their entire admin team back in May or spring meeting. So they were.
It's
really
pretty cool.
Yeah, and along those lines, the district was recognized at the gold level of recognition by the state organization that supports this work. It used to be called Mtss, now it's called the Michigan MTSS Technical Assistance Center, which is way harder to say than Mtss. So I still call it Mtss because it's just a lot easier. And then all of our buildings, all 7 elementaries were at the silver level for their behavior systems and the bronze level for reading currently. So,
What does SWIS stand for?
SWIS stands for School-Wide Information System. Yeah, it's a way of tracking student behavior.
Yeah.
So when it comes to your priority action steps, what, yeah, ancillary, if you remember the last board meeting, I'm looking for those anecdotal. What effect do you think not having parents in the school over these last 2 years has done with these scores? It's part of your action steps too, right?
Well,
More parent involvement.
so parent involvement here is a little different than just general parent involvement in the school. And so let me explain a little bit what
And I
this is.
understand that.
Yeah.
I'd like
Okay.
to hear more
No,
about
we
it.
can go into detail.
Yeah, okay, so what we mean for this is when we're looking at setting up positive behavior support systems within a school building, we want to make sure that the supports that we put in place, the expectations that we have for student behavior are representative of the community, values, diversity, groups like that. Because MTSS can be a promoter of equity, or it can be a inhibitor of equity, depending on how things are set up. So we want to make sure that we have parent voices and community voices in our systems so that we can reflect the values and the makeup of the community around us with our values and things like that.
Is the community considered that school?
The community considered for the purposes of PBIS, it would be yes.
Okay,
Because each school has their own system. That's
correct.
Yeah.
Okay,
So with their own expectations.
all right. Okay, so you answered that one. That's
Yeah.
great. Thank you. Now, what's your thoughts or, you know, what would have happened if we would have parent involvement? When we finally turn on the parent valve, back into schools, what's your thought? What are we gonna see?
I don't know that I have a straightforward answer on that.
I
I think that there's a disconnect a little bit between home and school that has had to happen. Like there are a lot of parents that would want to be much more involved in school. We have parent volunteers that provide extra support in classrooms, and that can certainly boost support for students in many ways. Alongside that, though, I even when the parents are allowed back in school, I think the last few years have been very hard on families and budgets and time frame, things like that. And so I think it's hard to overestimate kind of how difficult that has been for systems for families, for support at home and things like that. So I mean, having parents in the schools is certainly a benefit to everybody. And so I don't know that it's going to be a magic wand that suddenly makes all of our difficulties go away, but it's certainly going to help.
Definitely. So, you know, if you look at where we've gone down, I'm gonna tell you, I've got two things that are really, you know, my priorities for this year, but the second one, which is what we're talking here tonight, is just improving and taking care of the students that we've created limitations for over the past couple of years. And how can we accelerate that? That's what I'm looking for, Jason. So the fact that you're starting to take it down that path, that's the extra stuff I'm looking for. The anecdotal.
We're excited about our steps.
We are, and I will say that one of the things I'm most excited about, and we're delayed for the year because of COVID, but we are really investing in our tier 2 and tier 3 support systems starting this spring. All of the buildings are going through integrated intervention systems professional development to set up MTSS processes around formally identifying kids for social, emotional, behavioral, academic intervention, and providing that support. We do a great job with that already. This is going to kind of codify some of the processes and procedures and develop some consistency for that.
Good.
Jason's been specifically working with a number of our reading interventionists and all of our reading paraprofessionals. We talked last time about that level of consistency and professional learning to build their capacity. So when we're delivering tier 2 reading interventions from building to building, we have levels of consistency and very capable staff then delivering those interventions.
Great. Thank you.
The question, I guess, as we move forward, right? You know, I felt, you know, prior to the COVID stuff, we were on a pretty good path, right? We had a lot of good plans. We were moving forward, right? We were going in the right direction. COVID obviously has changed, you know, a lot of those things, right? We may have taken a step back, Are you feeling like you're playing whack-a-mole for better? I don't know if that's a good analogy or not, right? But here are some of the things that are popping back up, things we had already had handle on. I mean, and how long do you think that'll continue? If you had a magic 8 ball, right?
I would say I think it's getting at what you're talking about, that we have really started to develop some consistency of process among buildings in the district. And the last 2 years, in some places, have been primarily survival, right? Let's get classroom staff, let's just get kids what they need at the very basic level, right? And so that has come at the cost of some of the consistency, because some buildings struggle at one time and others at another. And so you can't have this one meeting because suddenly we can't get 5 subs anymore to have the meeting to talk about this data that we need to. So that's what had been the biggest challenge to our systems level work, is that consistency. And I think this year is better than last year, and we're getting progressively a little better. And even this month is better than last month, frankly. I mean, just like the number of teachers one of our buildings said, we are full staff today for the first time in, whatever. So it's already, we're starting to feel a little bit of sense of that, like, okay, we can maybe see things improving. So
I wonder if we didn't have MTSS during COVID, would you see things differently in terms of progress? Or do you think just having that system, even though, it was kind of maybe fragmented and all, but the teachers knowing this and applying it as best they could, do you think it helped?
I do. Yeah, we spend a lot of time looking at data. When we came back in the fall of 2020, after having been out all spring, in the biggest impact was first grade data. We had kids who missed a quarter of their kindergarten year, some of the most foundational parts of it where things start to really integrate. They came into first grade and it was a gut punch for scores, because far and away the lowest score we've ever seen coming into first grade district wide. But by winter, many of those buildings had those kids back up pretty close to where they were in a normal year. By the end of the year, we were right back to where they were. So they were able to pivot and respond to the data with intentional conversations around problem solving and responding. They had to really upend things that they were doing.
Thank you.
This methodology, MTSS, is this something that is taught in any coursework, for teachers in college as they're coming out, they're prepared for this? And I guess it goes to my next question, right? It says over the last, so far this year, we've had a lot of hires. We've added a lot of staff, right? And I can only assume, John, that's going to continue to happen as we have more and more people retiring. So what is our systems and programs in place, right, to be an onboarding people? Because this is great stuff. This is great stuff. You guys are doing it right. And culture within a building can only go so far if you're all of a sudden replacing, 20% of the staff, right? In any given year.
So my operating principle, and I jokingly call it the zombie apocalypse principle, right? If we had a zombie apocalypse and it wiped out our entire staff, right? And then in 10 years, humans win the war on zombies, we come back and they say, man, Grandville had a great system. What were they doing? They could go into our documentation and find it all and restart it from scratch. Wow. So that is helpful as far as that systems level approach to making sure that we have processes in place written down, that staff are onboarded for that specifically. That's how sustainability happens, right? And so that's what you're asking about, sustainability, consistency over time. We have a new principal come in. We have our Google Drive folders are set up with all the documentation that they need for their systems, right? And they get access, they can look at it, they can find paperwork that they need. And so that's a big part of what I view my job as being, is making sure that we have a systematic way to keep that information in front of people. That's great.
Is that an interview question? Like, do you know MTSS kind of thing?
Not directly.
Okay.
It's more about, can they learn the system, right? We don't want to rule anybody out just because they don't know it yet.
Gotcha.
But can they learn the system and get on board with that?
Gotcha.
And wherever we can, we try to weave in zombie apocalypse.
There was a whole lot for you before pandemic.
It's fairly commonplace too nowadays to have MTSS and PBS and such. So hopefully, at least in the internships, they had some kind of exposure to it. have some.
It really is pretty widespread among local districts and even within the state now. It's pretty common language that people are being exposed to.
Great.
So
Thank you.
we'll be back early summer with a year-end update.
Yeah, I'm about to
This
do
is
that.
really nice.
Nice job.
Yeah,
Yes.
great
Nice job,
job.
Jace.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
I'm happy to talk to MTSS anytime.
Call you tomorrow at 8 a.m. So much. All right, now we're moving into the public comment section of our meeting. Just a reminder to folks coming up, you have 5 minutes. Mr. Highbar is going to keep track of that and give a 1-minute warning. Speakers are asked to express themselves in a civil manner with due respect for the dignity and privacy of others who may be affected by your comments. While it's not our intent to stifle public comment, speakers should be aware that if your statements violate the rights of others under the law of defamation or invasion of privacy, you may be held legally responsible. If you are unsure of the legal ramifications of what you're about to say, we urge you to consult first with your legal advisor. We're happy to have folks here tonight. It looks like we have about 6 comments. We're going to start with Janine Jansen. Good to see you again, and follow up by Tasha Jansen.
Okay, my name's Janine Jansma, and you have my address on file. I'd like to start by saying thank you, Bob. Always thank you, Bob, but thank you for asking the question about getting parents back in school, because that's pretty much all I am going to address tonight. So as the hysteria and hypocrisy continues regarding all things COVID, I'd like to address just one simple issue, and that is the issue of not allowing parents into the schools. This restriction has gone on far too long, and in my opinion, should never have been initiated at all. Children deserve and need their parents' participation and presence, especially during the special functions that occur throughout the school year. Denying that access to families is wrong and is actually an immoral and irresponsible act by social administrators and principals. These actions and decisions are not based on science. In fact, real science disputes and refutes every measure that has been put in place during these long past 2 years. After all this time, one has to wonder what the real reason is for denying parents into the schools and into the classrooms. For many years, I worked in daycare and preschool settings. One of our top assurances to the parents of these young children was that they were welcome to drop in anytime if they so desired. Quite frankly, having access blocked to one's child while in the care of another, any other, is highly suspicious and deeply disturbing. In this age of cancel culture, it may seem reasonable to cancel parents from the schools, but cancel culture is burning its last bridge and is no longer going to be tolerated by parents who love their children and refuse to see them suffer anymore. The heavy hand of tyranny is playing its last card, and in their game of dictatorship, they are about to lose. We are awake, we are aware, we are engaged, and we are not going to take it anymore. Let parents back into the schools. Start working for the parents again instead of lording over them. Your ridiculous rules, restrictions, and reliance on faulty data should embarrass all of you by now. It's time to drop this nonsense. Nothing prevents that from occurring except your decision to keep alive a protocol that does not support the families that you claim to represent. Remember who serves who. Be a good servant to the families who entrust their children into your schools and into your care. Open the schools to parents so that trust and confidence can be restored and where right relationships can once again be encouraged to blossom. God bless us all.
Shuttle, followed by Shannon Foss.
Well, my name's Tessa Jansma. You guys have my address on file. My mom kind of took everything I was gonna say. I didn't hear hers beforehand. We're to the end of the school year now, and we keep hearing you'll look into parents coming back, you'll look into it, but
from the presentation from Jason, which was nicely done, it sounds like you guys are willing to pay more people to come into the school to help with the social emotional learning when that naturally comes from the parents. And we are here and willing and ready to step back in and join the school again and help these teachers that we keep hearing are so stressed and overworked, which I imagine they are. This has been a wild 2 years. So if we could not go a whole nother 2 weeks without something being addressed about the parents, can you give us some kind of date, some kind of something instead of we're looking into it? Because it's March next week and it's almost over. Moving forward, we'll be having the election variant coming pretty soon. Mail-in ballots will be a must. So when that does happen, parent choice needs to stay in place. We will not abide by the health department, which is wildly corrupt, and that all will come out as well. But just following somebody else's order, saying, oh, parents, nope, no more. Nope, we gotta go for the election variant. We're not gonna take it. My son will be starting into the young fives next year, and I will be going into the schools. That's not an option. Like, it's just not, like, this needs to stop. If you guys do think we're gonna go back to masks and any other mandates, I would highly suggest offering online for those that, you know, want to continue the charade of COVID. Let them stay online and let everybody else come to school, because it's been the reverse the whole time thus far. I was gonna address CRT, but like I said, it's an election year. So once we get Garrett in, he's gonna ban it. So I won't waste anybody's time. High school dress code. Does anybody know that we don't have one there? Because I don't know if you guys have kids in high school, but oh my God, picking up, it's winter and the dress code is ridiculous. Like, come springtime, it's only gonna get worse. Can we do a little more for enforcing that? Like, I have a freshman son in high school. Can we not? Please, that'd be great. The student climate survey also that Jason spoke of is just grossly put together. Like, that needs parent approval, 100%. I had to fight tooth and nail to get Mr. C to let me even see it. To even send it to me. He wasn't going to. And this was back in 8th grade last year. And it's just, those questions are none of any of yours or the principals or any counselors. It's not their business. Nor is it your guys' place to ask those questions of our children. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go look at the climate survey questions that you guys hand out, because it's disgusting.
Sorry, to
1 minute.
in the audience.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I got there for you guys. Again, us parents, we're not trying to be your enemy, nor do we want to be on always the defensive back and forth. You guys are here to serve us for our children, and we're here to make it as easy as possible for you guys to do your jobs. So we could just maybe, I don't know, send out an email or a response or something. More parents than you know want to get back in these schools. And the trust has already been broken when we all seen what was going on in virtual. And I still haven't heard anything about Blake Mazurek when he just moved the BLM sign out of my camera site. Trust has been broken. Parents need to be welcomed back in. Thank you.
Followed by Lynn Jansen.
Shannon Foss, my name and her phone number and address are on file. I wanted to say thank you, Jason, for putting that the presentation together. It really gave me a lot of stuff to kind of back up what I wanted to say here. You mentioned that no elementary school has had 80% of their kids meet their benchmark this year. That's a scary thought. Parent involvement. We have a lack of parent involvement. When my boys were at Century Park, I did the fluency reading first, second, and third grade. That really helped pull out the kids that had the issues that they could focus on. And while it worked with the other ones in advancing their numbers. So parent involvement is huge. We have to get back in those schools. There's no doubt about it. We've seen recently in the past couple of weeks that the CDC has moved the goalpost yet again on our kids and the younger ones, especially for, up to 30 months now, they should have 50 words. That's disgusting. This flyer that I have, thankfully I'm a pack rat for paper. This is from the Gerber Foundation. This was given to us by our pediatrician for 24 to 36 months, printed in 2003. It says 2-year-olds typically speak between 200 to 250 words. And now we're benchmarking 50 words for 30-month-olds. So where is this breakdown going? A lot of it moving the goalpost because kids are masked, teachers are masked. They can't learn with a mask over the face. They have to see your expression. They have to see the enunciation for these kids to learn. We are doing way more damage to these kids than good. I know that some schools, maybe not our district, but some schools are still pushing the mask mandates and some on the younger kids. We have to find a way to bring the kids back up to where they need to be. And I think one focus is going to be getting the parents back in, getting the fluency reading, helping the teachers. Because I know every single one of my kids' teachers appreciated all the work that we did. Thank you for taking the arbitrary rules out of the sign-in sheets. I appreciated that. The rule of not speaking to others or for others is not in the bylaws. Therefore, if we need somebody to say something for us because we are working with scouts, we are allowed to do that. We can't arbitrarily also change the rules. Speaking of the be nice, because that was also brought up. I think, Roger, you told somebody that the school paid, what, $10,000 a year for this Be Nice program, when Spectrum Health has a blue envelope program that we can utilize for free. Why don't we do that and take that $10,000 and use it to help kids that can't afford the help, to get psychologists, to get help outside of the school? It's one way to reallocate the money. That'll help some of the kids that can help with the equity. Suicides have grown every year. In the first 3 quarters of 2021, 47% higher suicide rates among 5 to 8-year-olds. And these 5 to 8-year-olds count for 1 hospital visit per month. That's gross. I can't imagine being a little kid and being so distraught. It's 182% higher among 9 to 12-year-olds for the same period in 2016, 182%. We have to find another way to help our kids because what we're doing, it's not working. So I suggest that we take the money that we're using for the Be Nice program, jump onto the free Spectrum Health program. It's free to the schools. Use the money to allocate to help the kids that cannot afford to get help outside the school district. Thank you.
Next up, Lynn Jansen, followed by Michelle Thomas. Michelle, still here? Okay. Read something for anybody, please. And Julie Dow will be after Lynn Jansen.
Hello, I'm Lynn Jansen. I live at 109 Stonehenge. Wanted to thank Mr. Merkel for that very clear presentation 2 weeks ago. I think it showed what we all sort of expected would happen, that when we close schools, we put kids on iPads and we make communication between teachers and parents communication between teachers and students more difficult by covering their faces, our results are going to drop. That's in the past. There's nothing we can do about it now. I just hope that we learn our lesson going forward. When the state tells us to do something stupid, or the health department tells us to do something stupid that doesn't help the kids in our schools, I hope next time we look at them and say, you guys stay in your lane. We're going to continue to teach kids here. That's all I have to say on that. There's been a upsetting trend with regard to parent involvement at these meetings. Everything possible to make it more inconvenient to speak at these meetings has been done, especially since the beginning of this year. We have a nice note at the beginning of every meeting about how much we value parent involvement. And now we make sure that you can't skip the first 5 minutes of the meeting if you want to speak. You can't speak for someone else. We put in some arbitrary rules. I would encourage you to move public speaking back to the front of the line so people can know what time they have to be here in order to do that. There's also been a disturbing trend with regard to open meetings. The first meeting of this year was held in violation of the Open Meetings Act 30 minutes early without posting it to the public. Maybe that was an oversight. However, these new rules go further in saying that should the presiding officer not like what a parent or community member has to say, that they can have them removed. I want to remind you guys that Mrs. Thomas last year gave everyone a copy of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. It is a misdemeanor crime to violate that. If we get to the point where parents are being removed without the standard of the Open Meetings Act being act, which is actual violence, the standard is a breach of the peace in this room. If people start getting removed without meeting that standard, that is a crime, and we will press charges. Thank you.
Julie Dahl.
Good evening. My name is Julie Dahl. I live at 1056 White Pine Drive. I do just want to reiterate condolences, Roger, for the passing of your father. I'm sure we all feel that same way. Appreciate you being here tonight. First thing I wanted to address was the meeting from 2 weeks ago. A couple of things that stood out. First, I'm going to try to get these acronyms right, but the PBIS. Great that the kids were motivated to do good things. They were adorable up here. Loved that. One thing that really stood out to me was how we were tracking some misbehaviors. And one specific example was when the kids in line to go back into the building at recess misbehaved, they analyzed that data point and then they adapted it. Oh, let's just get rid of lines, right? So that was their solution. So instead of modifying the actual behavior, they modified the expectation. That to me does not promote success, especially for children. We need to hold kids accountable and not just modify the expectation when they're not adhering to it correctly. That also disincentivizes the kids who actually do it correctly. So that was just one thing that I feel like I don't know, that just didn't settle right at all. Also at that last meeting, it was obvious that test scores have dropped substantially. We all knew that was coming. I think collectively in this room, we knew that was coming, but we can't just, oh, it was a COVID thing. I think someone needs to be held accountable for that. Several people need to be held accountable for that. We as parents asked and asked and asked over and over and over again, please do not adhere to these mandates. They are hurting our children over and over and over again, and no one listened. So we want to have this communication and this respect, but yet where is the advocacy for the parents? Where is the advocacy for our students, for our children? Obviously their test scores tanked. I'm going to push back to Jason earlier said that the younger kids came in, it was terrible scores, and by the end of the year, they're back up to normal. That is a lie. They are not back up to normal, nowhere close. Okay, I at the time had a 4-year-old and 5-year-old. There was no way that they were going to start off their academic career in masks all day, every day. And I'm glad that we made that decision because all the test scores, everything, everywhere is coming back, that it's just been detrimental. And these will take years, if not a generation, to come back from that. So the fact that it's just, oh, it's okay now, incorrect. It's misinformation. Also today with the presentation that Jason put forward, personally, a little concerned with all the data gathering. Is this data mining? Where's the privacy for the students? Where's the privacy for the family? The questions that are asked? I thought this whole SEL stuff wasn't going to be tracked. I thought it wasn't going to be put on any sort of file. There's conflicting information here with what you are doing or what is happening with this data that you're gathering from these children. And that to me is concerning as a parent. And I think every parent should be concerned with that. And what sort of information is being gathered and who are you sharing that with? And what are these data points that we're getting? It's a lot of stuff that you're gathering, especially all these different data points. Personally, it concerns me. Speaking of SEL, obviously Grandville has not chosen an actual curriculum yet for SEL specifically. But I think that we need to think about the role schools play in the development of the children overall. SEL is basically encompassing the entire student, not just academically, psychologically, morality, everything. SEL. Again, as a parent, I push back on the role of administrators, teachers in school. You have, again, I've always said it, fantastic teachers here, some of the best. Love them.
1 minute.
But the role of the teacher and the role of the school is not going to be instilling morality. It's not going to be this whole pseudo psychology, amateur psychology actually can be very detrimental for the kids, and it needs to stop. SEL is not something that we want as parents. A lot of this mental health crisis recently has come from decisions that have been made in this room. So why are these people in charge of correcting the problem? Mental health is an issue now, absolutely. But is it the school's role to help these kids, or is it the families? The morality I teach my children is very different than every single person sitting in this room. Let's teach to the individual, not the collective. The experience that every single child has is incredibly different. We cannot categorize them all. You are this, this, and this, therefore you must have had this experience. It should not be based on gender, race, anything else. It's based on individually.
Thank you for your comment, Julie. The next workshop, board meeting of the Grandville Board of Education will be Tuesday, March 8th, 2022 at 7 p.m. at the admin building. That concludes our meeting for tonight, 8:47.